Hello and welcome back to the Comic Literate Podcast, the podcast where I, Ryan, the soon-to-be known as Comic Stan, will take a comic and make my non-comic book reading but literature enthusiast friend and co-host have a read so we can have a discussion and get a different point of view on it. I've changed the opening on the fly.
Oh, I can tell.
On the fly, yes. It's not going well, but, well, it was until I addressed it. But, you know. And speaking of co-host and my non-comic book fan but literature enthusiast co-host, it is the swashbuckling Jamie.
Yo, what's up?
Try to fit in the descriptor term.
I'll go with swashbuckling.
I mean, it's appropriate for this term.
I feel like I'm a swashbuckler.
But I thought I'd change up the opening because we've mentioned this off air. I feel like it's a thing we do already anyway. Why don't we present it as like, hey, here's a new thing? Well, we talked about it last week.
I think it's the USP of the podcast is that I don't know if there is another comic book podcast that exists where there is somebody who knows as little about comic books as me. Like, that is the unique selling point of what we do, is that I don't know a whole heap about comic books, and actually what you get from me is the perspective of somebody going, what the fuck?
Because who would be foolish enough to make a podcast about a subject that they don't know much about?
Foolish or confident?
I mean, either or, you know, in the eye of the beholder, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fine line. There's two wolves inside of you, and one is confidence and one is foolishness. Is that the phrase?
Foolhardiness?
Foolhardiness? It's a bit,
Foolishness?
Foolery. Tomfoolery.
I am a fool of a Turk.
Tomfoolery. And speaking of Toms, we're actually reading a comic written by Tom Taylor today.
Tom Taylor?
Tom Taylor today, yes. That's right.
Do you reckon Tom Taylor today is what he says when he walks home to his wife? He just opened the doors and goes, Tom Taylor today, and she's like, oh, Tom, must we do this every time?
I think he should say it first thing in the morning as a self-affirmation. Like,
nice. Yeah,
like,
in the mirror while he's brushing his teeth.
Just first consciousness. Like, as soon as you remember who you are and what your name is, like, he says it then.
Okay.
Which is about like 2 or 3 seconds when you kind of first wake up.
You remember those things?
I mean, it takes a while, obviously. Does it? Don't speak to me till I've had my morning coffee. I don't know. I'm absolutely useless. You know, that old jive.
I must admit, whenever I like fall over and hurt myself, the first thing I do is a little brain function test where I sort of go, right, my name is Jamie, and then I think of my address and my date of birth and like my parents' names and their dates of birth and where they live, and I'm like, yep, cool. I have all my faculties.
I was scared for a second you were just going to start naming all that stuff off.
No, I'm not stupid.
And my account number, my national insurance number.
The password to my email account.
It's just password. It's not a big deal, is it? Password 1 with capital P.
No, it's just Comic Literate Podcast 1.
That's what we use for everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't tell them that.
They can get into our transistor.
Yes. So, yeah, that's what we do. We already do that. So this is what we're doing, and we're doing something slightly different in this episode as well, in that we are jumping into the middle of an ongoing series, right?
Yeah, that was fun for me.
I think it's going to be an interesting one because our criticism, and you see we're doing Nightwing. Nightwing is currently one of the longest running ongoing comic book series right now. It's because, so you get Superman and Batman. They
reboot them constantly, whereas Nightwing, they've just let run over.
So they reboot them as well as, but what they also do is they have their title runs, Batman and Superman, and then they also have, so Batman has detective comics and Superman has action comics.
But
So they use those names and they have numbers on them, which like the current ones is like 1,260, and it's complete bollocks. Because it hasn't been running for that long. They just pick it up every once in a while. So they'll go years without using it, and then they go, you know what, let's do Detective Comics again.
But surely then they have to keep going from whatever number was the last number.
Oh yeah, the number, yeah. But it's arbitrary story. It's just the new Batman story. But they just slap that title on. So it looks like it's been running for a long time, but it hasn't.
Yeah.
And there are like proper comics that run for a very long time. Obviously, like your more secular ones like Invincible and Walking Dead. I'm just thinking of Kirkman off the top of my head, but also long running ones like Sandman, which is part of the DC. But
I'd be really interested to pick up whichever DC or Marvel comic has been running for the longest without interruption. I'd be really intrigued to know which one that was.
This might be that. This generally might be that. So
look at me getting to have my cake and eat it all at once. That's great.
So this Nightwing comic started in 2016, and they might have changed writers, they might have changed artists.
Well,
it's the ship of Theseus, you know? Like, is it still the same one? But it's been running since 2016 when they did a rebirth, what they called it. And then loads have redone number one since then, but apparently Nightwing has been a consistent quality that everyone kind of agrees that it's just kept going, and now we're issue 1000 plus. So we thought, what better to jump into one in the middle? Because again, the other reason I'm bringing this up is a lot of our qualms with these ongoing titles, when we'll do like a number one, for instance, and jump in, is from the start they are explaining everything that happened previously, like in the series that ended just before this one. They're explaining things that happened like years ago. They're putting a lot of over exposition, and we will criticize that. We'll say, it's too much.
And so we've leveled the same criticism at a lot of comics, and actually what we're criticizing is the way that they start runs. And to be honest with you, already I see the purpose of having done this, because we've jumped in media res, and there was none of that. There was absolutely none of that in this title.
So this one, I think, is a much better one for that. Like it does a better job of giving the exposition, but not in a ham-fisted way like a lot of other stuff does. But also what we're doing is we are experiencing what they are intended for, which is someone being in a comic book store or going online or whatever, and they say, oh, I've heard a lot about this Nightwing one. I'll jump in. I'll check out this issue that's just come out. And that's what they want, because then they put that stuff in to be like, here's what you've missed, but it's still good. Like, keep going. Like, it's going to keep going, but you don't have to worry about it. You go back and read the old stuff if you want, but you don't need it to. Yeah. You can go back and read the old stuff if you want extra context on what you're reading now, but it's not essential to understand what's happening now. So again, I think if you're just reading a story, that can be a bit of a detriment when you're just looking at purely from a story basis. But in terms of jumping in and out of comics, it's the advantage of it. So this is what we're kind of testing to see how that works. We've picked one of the better critically acclaimed comics, to the point where there's a reason.
Is this highly rated?
Not only is it highly rated, there's a reason I've picked this one in particular. They just announced, as of a few days from when re-recording this, it'll be a week plus from when this comes out.
Getting a film?
No, it's a Eisner Award nominee.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
And not only that, so the series is a nominee for ongoing series.
Yeah.
The first comic, the first issue that we're reading here, so we're doing 105 to 1010. 105. I know numbers.
1010. We read 900 issues of this, guys. Buckle in.
I mean, can you imagine if we had 100 issues of it? For one podcast episode?
This would be our Chinese democracy if that was the case. It never would have gotten done.
We're finally talking about Nightwing.
And Slash isn't there. It's not very good.
Yeah. Issue 105 was nominated for a single issue award.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Exactly. So I saw that and thought, could we jump in at this issue and then like assess it as a whole series, as like an ongoing series as well? So we're going to obviously be looking at some other Eisner Award nominees in the coming weeks, just to kind of...
It's the only thing that keeps me coming back and recording. Is
Eisner Awards.
Occasionally somebody else curates a list of like, these are the good ones. It's all the Eisner Awards could be renamed the list of stuff that Jamie will tolerate.
But I tell you what, though.
What?
Call us the bloody cutting edge, the bloody on the pulse of the critically acclaimed comics, because two titles that I won there, I will double check this, I'm certain of one, I'm pretty sure of the other. Two titles that were nominated in different categories. One was The Cull,
which was dope.
Yeah, and the other one was Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees,
which was really good.
And we just did those 2 weeks before the announcements came out. So
do you think possibly actually it's the other way around, and the Eisner Awards are going through comic literate episodes going, which ones did Jamie and Ryan like?
I think it's more of a symbiotic relationship, like we're reading stuff, they're reading everything else. Like,
have you checked off our emails? Like, have you made sure that they haven't been reaching out to us?
I looked through the emails, and the only bit of news to report is that we might have inherited some money from a Nigerian prince. So
we better get on top of that.
We'll deal with that as soon as we finish this. Yeah. So we'll wrap this up, and then we'll get onto that. But otherwise...
That was an awful double bluff, Ryan, because for a moment I got really excited that you were just... Because sometimes we have been known to, like, save pieces of information to tell each other on air. Like, I gave you a gift on air a few weeks ago. Like, we do that kind of stuff sometimes. And so for a minute I was like, something big happening. Like, did we get another pocket cast or something? Like, are we on another list or something? No,
I mean, not a good list. But
we're on a watch list.
Anyway, let's not try and manifest that into reality. So, Nightwing 2016 started in, and I mentioned the writer Tom Taylor, who I've read a bit of stuff of and has done good stuff. The artists, it does change a bit from issue to issue, so I've listed a couple of them. So 105, we have Bruno Redono. From 106 to 109, we have Stephen Byrne. And for 110, we have Sami Basri. So again, a bit of a unique thing with the ongoing. You have artists kind of jump in and out. It lends credence to my opinion, whether correct or not, that writers seem to kind of be slightly more important than the artist.
And this is where the house style comes in, isn't it?
Yes.
Because to be honest with you, on some level with something like this, I don't think it matters who's drawing it because they are drawing it to a pattern.
Yes, but I have noticed some differences, specifically with most of it and the last one we read, which is 110. So if we're starting with the arting,
I don't have a lot to say about it.
Well, you will do as soon as we've done the theme, obviously.
Yeah. Once we've done the starting with the arting.
And we're going to talk about art.
That's getting better.
Yeah, I mean, it's
You've
the same.
refined
it's the same every time. But
it's the same for the past, 70 episodes that we've done or something?
Yeah, because we do it every time. And if you don't notice it, it's your fault. And I'm talking to the listener. But yeah, so art-wise, my first note was house style.
Yeah.
But specifically, there's specific things I want to talk about. First is in 105. So 105... to get across now, the reason that this one has been nominated for this single issue, I think it's a lot to do with, it's a unique issue in that it is taking place entirely from the first person perspective of the main character, which is Nightwing.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, why it was nominated was because it was just a unique kind of take on a superhero comic.
Well, so Human Target was all in the first person, wasn't it?
No.
Was it not?
No, it wasn't.
Was it not?
It was not, no.
Oh.
There were many scenes where you were looking at Christopher Chance. You know what Christopher Chance looks like, because it wasn't in first person.
Yeah, I suppose, actually, yeah.
Have you Mandela affected yourself into thinking?
Yeah,
something?
I have, yeah, absolutely. This was all in the first person, wasn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And it was
cool.
A very unique thing. I've never seen it before, except for maybe a single panel or page or something.
Yeah, because we were seeing from his viewpoint, in Peep Show, weren't we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's first person. Yes.
Well, no, but there's a difference between something being in first person perspective and a first person narrative. A first person narrative just means we're only seeing his thoughts.
Yes. So I think the first person narrative is quite common with these because a common complaint we have with superhero comics is there's a lot of narration going on from normally the main character, and it's normally that added exposition without having to put in dialogue,
which is interesting because that's not true first person narration, because we're still really seeing an omniscient third person narrator because we're seeing things that they're not seeing, and we're privy to other characters' private moments as well. But this is true first person, isn't it?
Yep. And I thought the art did really good at reflecting that, because I think that would have been a unique task for an artist to suddenly do this house style in this perspective. I think there's a lot of creative use of mirrors and reflections and how they view the action that's going on and things like that. One of the things I noticed, which I thought was really interesting, was the speech bubbles for everyone. They're normal for everyone else, but for Nightwing, they don't have the tail that points to the person. Instead, it has his color, which is normally done for thought bubbles.
Yeah.
But it has an indentation where the tail normally is.
Yeah.
So it kind of says it's inverted. So it's not coming from outside the person. It's within. You're hearing it in your own head because you're in first person perspective. So little things like that I thought were interesting.
Yeah, I suppose it presents some interesting challenges that the artist had to work around, right?
Well, it might have and it might not. I think that's the most interesting thing. We don't know how difficult it would be to suddenly change up the perspective.
But somebody had an idea for illustrating it that worked, right?
Yes. The particular panel I thought was really good and really paid off this style or this perspective for this issue was when him and Batgirl are first jumping out of a window.
Yeah.
And that's sudden from indoors to outdoors, and you just see this entire not just big city, but big drop down as well. They fit the sky and the ground within the page. Obviously a big splash page, so it had to be.
So just very briefly, is this one that you've read before? Is this one that you have any experience with?
So interestingly, it's interesting to me. I tried it when I tried it near a few years ago.
Yeah.
So near when it first started. And because I heard how good it was, I picked it up and I tried it for a bit. And I kind of had the same response then as I do now, which is I thought objectively it was really good, but it wasn't for me.
Oh, okay.
Like, I read it and went, it's entertaining, like, it's fun, like, it doesn't take it too seriously, but it's still got exciting moments. I like the characters. But when I kind of put that all together, I just went, I don't really care to continue it, though.
Yeah.
So that was my kind of response. And then since then, all I've heard from every year afterwards was, oh my God, Nightwing is still great. And I'm like, I kind of put my hands up. I was like, I guess that's the one that's great that I just isn't for me and I'm just not into. Just did not click for me. So I think I still have a lot of great things to say about like these issues that we've read. But yeah, that was my kind of take. So I know a lot about the character. I read the bits before the latest one. I read the bits where basically, so I sent you a piece of information to know before going into this because I read that it, came up again and might be quite confusing. And that's the Dick Grayson, Nightwing, at one point got shot in the head by a character called KG Beast. Doesn't matter. But he got shot in the head. He lost his memories. The memoryless him became Rick Grayson. And basically rejected the Dick Grayson identity and the Bat family and all that bollocks, became his own kind of vigilante for a bit, cooler, rougher kind of guy. And then I didn't finish this. I think this might have been why I dropped off. At some point between then and now, he regained his memories and he's just Nightwing again.
So, right off the top, can I go through some of Jamie's... this is that we can have... Well, we get to do the age-old theme tune that we do every time this comes up.
Yep, every time.
Every time. It's Jamie's comic book assumptions.
Yeah.
Which you've heard every time that we've done this bit.
Yeah, of course.
This is a regular feature in the podcast.
Yeah.
Dick Grayson, first Robin.
Yes. Well done.
So he's the first extension to the Bat family.
Yes, the first.
And he uses two batons.
As Nightwing, he does, yes.
It's cool. Yeah, well, yeah, he wouldn't have done as Robin, would he?
I might have.
So is he sort of the first edition of the Bat family? This is where the Bat family starts.
Yeah. He was there before there was a Bat family. It was just him and Bruce.
Well, and...
just two guys palling it up, getting nuts.
And Alfred. Comic book assumptions with Jamie.
How rude.
And then Batgirl.
Yes. She was the third, I guess, technically.
So, but she wasn't Robin, right?
No, she was never Robin.
So who the fuck is Batgirl?
Batgirl is Barbara Gordon, the daughter of Commissioner Gordon.
Oh, that's fun.
Obviously, a lot of different origins and reinventions and stuff. The basic thing is she was kind of inspired by Batman and Robin, I think, at the time, like saw them. And she kind of went out of her own way to become her own Batgirl. Yeah. And she started fighting crime. She had, martial arts experience growing up, the daughter of a police chief is like, you're going to learn to defend yourself and all that. So she was fighting crime and then they kind of then crossed paths in that way. And that's, how it built.
And then Dick Grayson was a Teen Titan.
Yes.
And so I've seen some Teen Titan cartoons.
Yep.
Where there's like a teenage Robin.
Yes.
Is that Dick Grayson?
Most of the time, yes.
Most of the time.
Sometimes it's Tim Drake. Sometimes it's Jason Todd. Like, it depends what era. Like, all Robins have been Teen Titans because, like, the Robin identity is connected with the Teen Titans, yeah. A lot of times now you'll have Nightwing. Nightwing is part of the Titans, the adult Titans. And then you have right now there's a Titans and there's a Teen Titans, and Damien Wayne is in the Teen Titans.
Well, yeah, so Damien Wayne was the other one that I was like, oh, I clearly know who that is, right? Like, clearly I can put two and two together there.
Bloody Damien.
But, so, he's Batman's son.
Yes, he is. He's Batman Jr.
And does he the hero?
Now, because his backstory, for anyone who doesn't know.
Is he Batman Jr.? Because obviously we've already met Batman Senior.
Yes, yeah. Batman
we did a whole episode on Batman Senior, didn't we?
Yes, he was a fun one, wasn't he?
Days of Future Past?
No, in Flashpoint, which was
Days of Future Past?
That was the X-Men one.
That's the X-Men film, isn't it?
X-Men film and comic that we covered as well. From the 80s.
We did cover Days of Future Past. Yeah, I remember. God, I've read... This is the thing, Ryan. When you're not like a comic book guy, So I'm unique.
That's why we have this dynamic.
I've probably now read more comic books than anybody who doesn't identify as a comic book guy.
Yes, I would say so.
I've read enough comics that I can hold conversations with comic book people now, and comic book nerds think I'm one of theirs. And then I have to explain, no, I'm not a comic book nerd. I just have a comic book podcast. And they go, but
you know so much.
Yeah, doesn't that make you a comic book nerd? And I'm like, well, no, because the whole thing is, so that's why I commissioned you to change the intro. That's not what happened. Yeah. But it is very helpful because now when I have to explain that to those people, I can just pull up an episode of the podcast and go, no, listen.
Yeah. I tell you what, right? You'll enjoy it. Tell you what. I was at the pub the other night and I was speaking to someone we know, and I mentioned about the Bone Claws clip. It's most successful one on TikTok, like 20,000. So
you had to get that in there, didn't you?
What?
Humble brag.
Humble brag. 20,000.
Try 600,000, motherfucker.
So it'll never happen again.
But anyone who doesn't watch our shorts, one of them did quite well.
Yes. So I was talking about the Bone Claws, and a guy on the next table. So I mentioned about the Bone Claws. Wolverine at one point in the films gets his metal ones cut off by Silver Samurai, and then the Bone Claws come out, and he's got the Bone Claws for kind of amount of time until the next film, where they just Days of Future Past film, where they just gave him metal ones again and didn't explain it because time had passed, so anything could have happened in that time. Guy on the table, and they're over, like reaches over, and he's like, "Excuse me, just thought I'd let you know, Wolverine's metal actually grows back with his bones, so he wouldn't have kept the Bone Claws like." Permanently, like because the metal would have grown back as well. And I
comic book guy.
I wanted to. Here's the thing: I wanted to shoot him down on that premise because I've never heard of that before. Yeah. But instead, I went really specific on. Well, we're actually talking about the Wolverine films, and in the Wolverine, he doesn't regrow it back because they haven't established that aspect.
I really want you to say, "Actually, I'm a professional."
I pushed the glasses that weren't on my face. Actually,
I'm a professional reviewer of comic books, and I can refer you to a podcast episode I made on this very topic.
And if you want it even better, we were just then talking about Wolverine. I wasn't like a dick. I was like, oh, actually, we're talking about this. And he was like, oh, all right, fair enough. And then I accidentally spoiled for him a big point of X-Men 97.
Oh, nice.
Cartoon,
nice.
Completely unintentionally.
You are the king of spoilers.
I just went, oh, yeah, because it was like this that happened in X-Men. And he went, oh, I haven't finished that yet. And I was like,
brother.
So yeah, we are the authority on comics, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, do you know what? I think at some point, if I keep doing this for long enough, I will become an authority on comic books accidentally.
Yeah, you absorb your knowledge by osmosis, just by being here and talking.
You know, and I listen to every episode.
Yeah. Someone's got to.
This is it. Yeah, absolutely. Someone's got to drive those view counts up.
Exactly. So before we leave the art, the one thing I wanted to make a point was the house style, as you pointed out, very same across the board.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice was the perspective thing of the issue 105. That's all. That's unique in its own way. From that point afterwards, I think the Nightwing style is the DC house style, but with quite bright and vibrant colors.
Yeah.
Which I think is very specific and intentional, because Nightwing, to me, and I think I've told you this before, to me, Nightwing is well-adjusted Batman. He's got all the Batman skills.
He had two father figures.
Well,
he
that
had
as well.
He had two whole father figures that Bruce didn't.
Yeah. No, well, Bruce he had Alfred as well. So he had Alfred as a father figure.
Yeah, so he had one more than Bruce had.
Yes.
Because he had Bruce.
Yeah. And Bruce was his own dad, in a way. Didn't help much, but he was.
Yeah, I mean, he did a better job of parenting Dick than he did himself.
Potentially, yeah. Potentially. I mean, he was a child when he was parenting himself, so I guess that's the reason why. As a side note,
I really enjoy the thing that Alfred does. That's the same thing that the butler in The Fresh Prince does.
What? The sly sarcasm?
Well, that, but also Dick is Dick Grayson, right?
Yes.
But he calls him Master Richard.
Yes.
The same way that Jeffrey called Will Master William. And that just really amused me when I saw it.
Yeah, I think he's got to keep up airs, you know.
Because the jump from Richard to Dick is one that I've never fully understood.
Yeah,
Understood?
It's a weird one, isn't it? Like, I've never understood it, but then you've got all those ones like, was it Bill for William and all those kind of ones? Like,
well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, John to Jack has never made any sense to me.
That's weird.
And that's very, like, typically English.
Yeah. Charles and Charlie, right? Charlie's is the shortened version, but it's the same amount of letters.
And
it's
more syllables.
Yeah, it's phonetically like a bit more like looser and informal than Charles, obviously, because Charles sounds very formal. But yeah, it's definitely not the shortened version, but we think of it as the shortened version. So names are a funny thing. And speaking of names, but yeah, I think well-adjusted Batman in the sense that he has all the skills of Batman, but he doesn't have that compulsion to wage war on all crime in a city,
which we see very well displayed in issue 105.
Yes, and he just has more of a bit of like, I mean, I've got the skills and I will help people, but I'm also going to like, live a life myself and prioritize my own well-being a little bit as well.
Yes, absolutely. So jumping into the comic.
Well, one other thing with the art, and I think you'll agree.
He's not gotten there yet.
One other thing you agree. The bright vibrance, for some reason, it drops off at 110.
Yeah, right.
And 110, we have a discussion. I have some things to tell you about 110, which is its own discussion. Yeah. So that kind of combines it. But that's what made me really notice, like, oh, yeah, the colors were really nice in the earlier ones.
And Dick's character looked a bit different in 110 as well.
Exactly.
There was like a level of inconsistency, and then the art style changed a bit. But I don't know if that's just because they had Superman Jr. and Batman Jr. in that one.
And it was a different artist. But again, there's reasons for that, which we'll get into.
So, can we just finish comic book assumptions with Jamie very quickly?
There's also those old school comic book dots. Did you see those? So some of the colors had like faded parts where you see the dots like old school comics, which is now it's intentionally put in.
Yeah.
And I think that was just a nice little thing. And I think that is unique to the Nightwing. So ending with the arting, your Jamie's assumptions.
Well, yeah. So Batman Jr.
Yep. Damian Wayne. Master Damien.
Master Damien. Does he have his own run?
Yeah. Yeah. He's had his old stuff. Yeah.
What's his superhero name?
Robin. He is Robin.
That sucks. So he's Robin as his own hero.
Yeah, currently, yeah. He hasn't grown up into another character or anything yet.
And then Superman Jr.
Yes.
What's the deal with what? But people call him Superman.
So there's two Superboys.
Like I've heard him referred to. I saw him referred to as Superman.
Yeah.
In
so
that,
normally what happens there is that for whatever reason, and this happens across the board, Batman or Superman will be incapacitated for some reason, and then they step in their place for a bit. So.
Understudy.
Understudy.
You know how in theatre.
Yes, the understudy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like imagine the world is ending, right? And you call for Superman, and you see him flying over, and you go, "Oh fuck, it's his teenage son."
Yes.
Like I wouldn't be happy if my plumber did that, let alone Superman.
So I've had on the job experience, but how many times have you done this by yourself?
I know you've watched your dad screw a toilet back together, but this is my toilet, and it's very important that this toilet doesn't have aliens coming out of it anymore, Superman Jr.
The city's on fire. Have you dealt with that yourself before? It's like, well, I've helped my dad with it. It's like, that's not filling me with confidence.
I've done the e-learning.
Done the theory test. So
does Superman Jr. have a run?
Yeah, if they're a character of this kind of prominence, they've had their own run. That's a larger problem for me of like too many runs and too many characters having runs.
Yeah.
Like they make them less special. Like it's not significant. Like you're asking me that because you don't view it that way. For me, I'm surprised if any character doesn't have their own run.
Because for me, I'm like, I want to see teenage Superboy just fuck it up.
He had a really good one recently. It was maybe a bit controversial, I know, but he had a really good one recently where, so I've talked to you about the Injustice comics.
Yep.
And that's an evil Superman who is his Lois and his unborn child. He gets tricked into killing by the Joker, so he murders the Joker and becomes like a dictator over a long period of time, and they do a really good job of like slowly building. He doesn't just go, right, I'm an evil dictator now. Like it starts from like, right, I'm never gonna let this happen again, like no more war, like bollocks to your countries, like I just want peace. Like he's going that way, and then because Batman's like, well no, we have to let people live their own lives, and then that builds on that gets the Injustice video game where they all fight each other. There was a Superboy run very recently, which was good because Superboy had to basically fight and confront this evil Superman from the Justice universe. So imagine, I thought they did a really good job with the kind of dichotomy because they weren't just immediately fighting, but Superboy's like, hey, you're being kind of an evil dictator. And that Superman's like, yeah, my Lois and potentially you, unborn child, died. was murdered by the Joker, tricked me into murdering them. So Superboy's like, okay, I get that. Like, I'm very empathetic of that. You still can't be doing what you're doing. And it, they had a really good story there.
Cool. I liked Superboy.
He's an interesting one.
I liked him I liked him notably more than I liked Damien.
Yeah, Damien's meant to be unlikable, which is why I like him.
But I suppose Damien is a spoiled rich kid.
Even worse. So Damien's backstory, for anyone who's interested, is...
Everyone's interested,
Everyone's on tender hooks.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm fucking interested, so I don't care if they care. I want to know.
I was going to say, if anyone else wants to object, now's your chance. All right, fine. There we go then. So Damien Wayne, he was conceived without Bruce's knowledge. Talia al Ghul is Damien's mum, who is the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, who is the big bad, immortal being, head of assassins, whatever they're called, the Assassins Guild or League of Assassins.
Because I assume Catwoman would be his mum.
She's had other kids in other worlds with him, and she is like the prime one. Talia is like the on and off again, like, you're evil, but there's something there. Like
the
that
side piece.
Yeah.
Well, he does like him evil, though.
Well, the thing is, Catwoman's just a thief. Like, he has to reconcile with, like, look, you're breaking the law, but, you're not, like, hurting people intentionally.
And in fairness, he's a billionaire, which essentially is just being a thief, so...
Yeah, in a sense, but he's using it to beat up poor people who rob bread from bakeries or whatever, so it all makes up for it. But yeah, Talia al Ghul basically has sex with Bruce Wayne, doesn't tell him that she's pregnant afterwards, and then years later, basically she's raised his son as a League of Assassin from like birth,
right?
So he's been trained to be a lethal fighter from birth,
so he's good at what he does.
Yes, but the problem is he also has the ideology of them. Which is the League of Assassins, what they do is they are kind of twisted Bruce Wayne logic. They're like, we also want to get rid of crime everywhere. But our thing is like, if a city is overrun with crime, we just kind of want to nuke it and then like pave over it and start over. They're that kind of extreme. So, and Ra's al Ghul actually picked Bruce Wayne to be his successor. But Bruce Wayne was like, no, I'm not doing it your way.
What, Bruce?
Yeah, Bruce Wayne.
Batman Jr.
Yeah. Say the Batman. They actually...
No, he's Batman Jr. We have to give him his proper title.
You can call him that.
Because his dad was Batman for a bit. So he's Batman Senior. And
in
then
another world, though. So
Batman Jr. is Batman Jr. Yeah, no, I don't care.
Not in this world.
I don't respect the authority of DC and their bullshit multiple universes.
I mean, they're all doing multiple universes now, so...
Yeah, and I respect none of their authorities, Ryan.
But then now I don't know which Batman you're talking about, because you're just talking about all Batmans across all infinite universes.
Yeah.
If you don't respect the boundaries, then...
Well...
We're going to be here all day if I'm telling you about every single Batman and their like different wives and love childs and everything like that. So
love childs?
Yeah. There's other realities which we don't have time for. We don't have time to get into it.
But I want to know.
We'll do them on different comics.
Well, I mean, we're definitely going to have to do some Damian Marley Batman comics at some point.
Yeah. Or there's apparently a really good one, Batman and Elmer Fudd. Apparently it's really good. And I tell you what, do you know why it's really good?
Why?
I just remember this. It's written by Tom King. I'm pretty sure that he did Batman and Elmer Fudd crossover.
That's mental.
But they did. So there's multiple issues, and some of them are in Looney Tunes style, and some of them are in DC style.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So we'll do that at some point for a laugh. But Damian Wayne, the two things I think is noble is, so one thing, Ra's al Ghul, he always calls Batman detective. Like, he always refers to him as that, and that's because, like, that's the aspect of him that he wants.
Yeah.
It's not because he's a fighter, because he's got loads of them, but he wants the brains, like, the crime solving. The other thing is, Talia al Ghul, at one point, she goes, you know what, Damien? You're getting a bit annoying, and you're kind of getting a bit evil. And because Talia's, like, kind of on her dad's side, but not, like, fully. She's like, you know what, I don't really want this for you. Like, maybe you should get out in the world and see a bit. And then she literally just turns up to Batman and goes, here's your son.
Well, it just turns up at Wayne Manor and goes, here you go.
Yeah, literally.
Is it called Wayne Manor?
Yeah, but I think they was like on a rooftop or something.
Well, you don't go to the front door of Wayne Manor, do you? You don't just get to the Batcave.
She'd probably sneak in if she really wanted.
Yeah.
But she's just literally like, here's your son.
Here's your bastard, now fuck off.
And Damien's, I think, in some iterations, his first like words to Batman basically is like, thought you'd be taller. But Batman's just like, oh, fucking hell.
Well, like Anakin meeting General Grievous.
Basically. Because he'd heard about him. He'd been told about him.
He'd been told how tall he was.
Yeah. So Batman makes Damien into Robin as kind of a bit of like look, you need to fucking hold your horses a bit and learn from the start, because I'm not having just a league of assassin like with me. So you need to learn to be Robin. And Damien, takes this on, and now he's his own good guy and that kind of thing. So we've covered Damien and some of the Robins.
Yeah.
Any other assumptions that you want to address at all?
No, I'm good.
Right.
I mean, I think we definitely need to at some point delve into Superman Jr. properly. I want to know more about that.
Mm.
But I suppose this is only our second Bat Universe thing, because we got a little bit of it in Poison Ivy.
Yeah, Poison Ivy is one of the rogues, so yeah, he was in that for a bit.
Yeah, because really we've not done a whole lot of Batman.
No,
on
we
this
did
podcast.
the first issue. We did his first and latest issue, so we compared those.
We did his first and latest issue, and then we've seen him turn up as an ancillary character a bunch of times in other things.
Other titles.
He turns up a bit, he gets name checked a lot in
Human Target.
Yeah.
The best Batman issue without Batman in it.
Yeah, definitely. And then sort of, he gets talked about a bit in Poison Ivy. But this is my first time really experiencing anything in the wider Bat universe.
Mm.
And again, because we're now in the wider Bat universe, I suppose it also puts us into some of Superman's ancillary characters. And so I was just really intrigued by all these other characters I saw. In issue 10, the one issue that doesn't really fit into the...
Issue 1010.
Yeah, 1010.
Yeah.
Issue 1010, 1010. Which doesn't really fit into the other 4 issues that we read of this, which is quite interesting. But we'll get onto that.
Yes.
So I liked this story.
Yeah. So the main story we cover is 106 to 109, and it's a 4-part story within the ongoing title.
So essentially, Nightwing in issue 105... Nightwing is tracking some crims, and it turns out that they have actually stolen essentially the formula for a vaccine that an evil pharma company run by a villain, run by a supervillain, had jacked the price up on, and so they were stealing it and selling it at a massive discount to a country that needed it.
Yeah.
And this is the first thing that actually really sold me on Nightwing's character. Is that he looked at that grey area and went, well, actually, I'm kind of with you.
Yeah, I think the big difference between him and Batman is Batman would get to the same end point.
Yeah.
But I think he'd take longer to get there. I think he would take longer to be like, you're breaking the law and I'm bringing you in. And they'd be like, no, but we're doing this good thing. And he's like, I think he'd take longer to be like,
I mean, on some level, I think that Batman is... when we talk about Batman... we have to talk about him within the context of him being a really rich person and the things that really rich people do.
Yes.
And really, really rich people don't really like seeing other really rich people stolen from because, they have these huge empires, and actually in this one action, this character took a lot of wealth away from somebody very wealthy. And so Batman would probably on some level identify with the wealthy person who's been wronged. And not the ways in which he's harming humanity. Whereas Nightwing was able to look at that situation from a less privileged perspective, I suppose.
I think that's definitely an element. I think there is a criticism of Batman, like the surface level criticism is like, oh, he's a billionaire beating up poor people. That's the thing. And I think for a long time that was accurate. But what has happened is, because that was a common observation, the latest Batman stories do involve him being more pursuing billionaires who aren't who aren't actually committing crimes, but they're behind it because they're removed from it enough to kind of remove blame. There's more him dealing with those kind of people. One of he's got all these enemies that have been around since the 50s and 60s, right? One of his most recent enemies, which is kind of comics constantly make new enemies that just get completely forgotten about until decades later when a Tom King will bring him up again, be like, do you remember bloody Sandal Man or whatever? There you go. But
what was the one we got? It was something we read recently, and there was a dude with a boombox.
The hypno disco guy.
Yeah, what was that?
Spider-Man Rain.
Yeah, there we go.
The worst comics I've ever read. So, one of the villains that actually most recently was created, I think in the noughties and stuck around, was a group called the Court of Owls.
Okay.
So the Court of Owls then...
So I hear them mentioned in this.
Yes. So they're not a singular person or even a small group. They are the rich and wealthy of Gotham who basically meet in Freemasons, Illuminati style way.
Yeah.
So they all wear these masks, and there's no singular, like, this person is the leader of the Court of Owls. Like, they just are a collective who make these decisions. They are represented by a brainwashed fighter who's called Talon. So the Talon of the Owl.
Yeah,
and all
that makes sense.
But the point is, that was, I think, brought in as a kind of response to Batman is a billionaire who defends billionaires. That was like these are how the billionaires operate. They're not like robbing banks.
He's a good billionaire.
Well, the thing about Batman is, again, I think they've changed in the past where he was born into riches. He went through this really traumatic event. And then quite soon after that, he basically went off by himself to learn to become Batman. And when I say go off by himself, I don't mean like he chartered a plane. Like he literally just left with the clothes on his back because he knew that wouldn't help him achieve anything. So he lived, like, his formative years were living in poverty, learning from like the best of these different skills. Like he learned to become the world's best like pickpocket, the world's best thief to like break into places, the world's best martial arts fighter, the world's best detective. Like he learned all those by traveling the world and just finding these people.
Going where the experience was, not where the money was.
So I think there is a point of Batman being not a typical billionaire. Not just because he dresses up as a bat and fights crime, but because
all billionaires do that at some point. They just do it on Epstein's Island.
Yes. Oh, God, too right. But his wants and needs are not ones that be bought with money. So he doesn't value money as anything less than a tool for, being to achieving his goals. But so not your typical billionaire. I see your point. How you think Batman would kind of respond. Nightwing does make a very specific point where he's confronting this boss who is a villain who he doesn't know yet, but is a villain. And the boss literally says, what I'm doing is not illegal though. And Nightwing goes, it's immoral. Yeah. And he's like, that's why I'm stopping you. And then even after that, Nightwing still has to be like, look, the laws are like, they broke the law, they've stolen, we got to kind of compensate. Even though these guys are assholes, we kind of still have to compensate them because it's the right thing to do. I think that's a big test of like him doing the right thing, even though it's for the wrong people.
Do you know what he said though, very specifically?
Sure, go on.
He didn't say we need to compensate the company or him. We need to compensate the people who develop the drugs.
Yes.
And that's the thing, isn't it? That's the difference. It's like, if we're getting into these wider socio-political arguments, which I think this comic is like encouraging us to do.
I mean, it's used it as a subject, so it kind of warrants it, whether it wanted to or not, it's raised them.
The people who make life-saving drugs need to be paid for that. I don't think pharma companies who own the patents to them should be allowed to extort people.
No.
And that's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think like highly skilled people who do work that we need to carry on as humanity need to be properly remunerated. Do I think that people who design life-saving drugs should be paid well? Fuck yeah, I do.
Yes.
Incentivize the shit out of that work. Do I think the company that they work for is then able to leverage that and extort, countries that are suffering from disease and famine and stuff like that? Well, no, I don't. I think that's wrong. And again, Dick Grayson nails that line. He's like, his opinions on the matter are so similar to mine that I can't help but think somebody who wrote this was having those thoughts and went, could probably wring an issue of a comic book out of this.
Yeah.
I think that's what potentially comic books can be really good at, is that you've got this really easily digestible storytelling medium that is meant to be mass market. On some levels is meant to be lowest common denominator. And then you use it to say something that I think needs to be said. And you use it to say something really important. And I kind of feel like that first issue 105 was doing a good job of that.
I think what's interesting is, I think we've said this before, like comics are always surprisingly progressive. And because you kind of forget that it's just like an artistic medium sometimes, because comics are so co-opted by like superheroes and like before they're like cowboys and westerns and like specific genres. But at the end of the day, they are still made by creatives. And like you see with film and television and books, obviously as well, creatives are normally the people who are like on the fringes of like these new ideas and progressive ideas and then bring them into these kind of mediums. So
yeah, I mean, writing and story is still seen as a liberal art form, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
And predominantly, I think, the people who get into these things end up in very liberal environments, like the fucking writing departments of universities. They're pretty liberal environments. So yeah, I fully agree with you. And so I think 105 was interesting on that level, but there's this whole other layer that's going on with the relationships that you're seeing Dick Grayson have or Rick have with these women in his life.
Yep.
And
so one thing I think is important to get across, I think you'll appreciate this. It's kind of widely accepted that Dick Grayson is the most attractive man in the DC universe.
I mean, he is pretty fucking good looking.
But most of them are pretty good looking. Like
the way they've drawn him, he kind of looks like an Americanized version of Kit Harington.
I thought he looked a bit sleeker, like a top tier male model. Like I think he kind of looks like that. Like
he looks like. Do you know what he looks like? If Timothée Chalamet was hench.
Timothée Chalamet, if he grew older and taller, because I don't know if this is like his final form
and
or
like
whatever.
Stacked out a
bit stacked, he'd make a great Nightwing.
Do you know what? You're fucking right.
We've cast that.
Somebody at DC needs to listen to us and make a Nightwing film with like, just get Timothée Chalamet in the gym for like 6 months. Really like bulk him out.
Get him on steroids. Like all the actors do it.
Then his voice would break.
That might be good for this. Might be good for this role.
Timothy, if you're listening, I loved you in The King. Like, you were great.
Loved you in Dune.
Still not seen it.
It's really good. So, and there's another reference to this as well. So that's the kind of widely accepted by the writers. Like Nightwing, Dick Grayson, the most handsome man.
Good looking bloke.
He's always got girlfriends. He's a dirty stop out.
Just Dick Grayson fuck.
Dick Grayson slings dick. Like,
well, I mean, and that is one of the central meditations of this comic book, is that he has a girlfriend.
Even when he's lost all his memories, he's still slinging.
That man still knows how to dick someone down.
But so that's widely accepted. The lower level, the deeper cut amongst like the fandom, which is acknowledged here in a way, is that he also has the best ass in DC, right?
Oh.
And that did not think about that until I saw one of the titles of one of the stories.
Yeah.
So past 105, if
bear in mind, I don't look at cover art and I don't look at titles.
It's not in the cover art. It's in like the first like page or so.
Okay, you need to show me because I don't remember this.
I'm going to bring it up now, and I'll cut out the. So it is the cover. It's cover of 107, and I've got it here.
I do remember this cover.
And if you want to read out, or I'll read out because I can see it was in the mic. It says, "Come for the." It's pirate swashbuckling. You know, theme of this story, which is great. And the front cover is him, like 40s romance novel, standing on the ship, and it says, "Come for the sea's immaculate beauty. Stay for Nightwing's pirate booty." And that's when I went, oh yeah. If he was in the calendar, he would be the one. What's the month with like you can make an ass pun out of?
Is there one?
No, I think we took a whole 10 minutes on silence trying to come up with one, and we couldn't. So I'll let it have the silence, but
I don't think it exists.
Yeah,
but
so, if you know one,
because the interrelationship stuff here is really interesting and fun. I don't really understand how they got from issue 105 to 106.
So
because the swashbuckling, so we get to the end of issue 105, and he's sort of in the process of dealing with this like farmer issue, and then it cuts to before he met Batwoman, current girlfriend.
Yeah. And when he's Rick Grayson.
Yeah, and he's still Rick Grayson. And then there's this whole shenanigans with the box, this thing that he gets handed that he's not ready to look at. And so his current girlfriend finds a pirate to like store it for him.
So that I think is interesting because I made a note of. So it reveals a point that Rick's ex-girlfriend basically helped hide this in what's called the Hold with a kind of magical-esque pirate man. Yeah. But it turns out that the pirate man is her dad. Yeah. So that's why she knew him.
But she refers to him as the quartermaster.
Yes. Because she's not like advertising that.
Yeah. And so he was the captain, but she called him the quartermaster.
I think he was the quartermaster at the time and maybe became, I don't know. It's
a bit muddy.
Yeah.
But I didn't really get that transition. It didn't make a lot of sense. And then we do snap back to the present day.
Yeah.
And it's the guy who runs the pharmaceutical company that Dick Grayson has just helped these criminals rip off.
Yeah.
That is trying to steal his shit from the Hold, basically.
Yes.
And it turns out he's been hired by her estranged brother, and that's where the link is, right?
Yeah. So there's another character who has, and this is the possible qualm with jumping in like this. There's another character called, I think it was Zuko or Ruko or something.
Who I didn't really...
I gleamed that he was just like a kind of gangster character.
Right, okay.
Who Nightwing had foiled previously. And then they make reference of like, he tried to steal us from us before and that kind of thing. So I think it was kind of it's previous stuff that it helps if you know, but I personally I didn't find it essential. So I just kind of gleam like this is what's happened.
I flew through the story without knowing and without any of the context. And again, this is a real testament to it, is that we jumped in 105 issues in and I had a good time.
Yeah.
Like a good time was had. It was good swashbuckling fun.
Which now kind of sets a precedent that we can do this with other comics, and if it's not good, we now have the evidence to say, well, it's not the fault of us jumping in midway because Nightwing was good even though we did that. So if it's bad, if we do another one and it's bad, we'd be like, well, that's on you.
Yeah, we've set a benchmark, haven't we?
Yeah.
Because to be honest with you, there was a lot of context we didn't have. Like we'd not seen any of the issues with B. We didn't really know that she was his ex-girlfriend, but that was explained well enough in context and everything worked, right?
And the dialogue was not so overly expositional. It's not to say it wasn't expositional at all. It was expositional, but it was in a level that was, I think, still made for a good, easy to read story.
It worked, didn't it?
Yes.
This is the thing, it worked. Like it was functional, and I liked the dialogue.
Yeah.
I liked the way that everyone spoke. I liked the way that everyone was written. I definitely got a sense of Dick Grayson's voice. Like I got a sense of his the way that he speaks, and I think he was distinct enough from Batwoman and B and the sailors that we meet that he kind of stood out as a character.
I like the ribbing between him and Batgirl.
Yeah.
It's very specific. It's a common theme so again, Dick Grayson, like biggest hunk of the DC, he constantly runs into these moments where another female character will imply something or joke with him basically, and then Batgirl jumps on the joke, who is his current girlfriend, and goes like, you're doing that, are you?
And it happens, one of the villains is like, oh, this takes me back, me running, you chasing and touching.
Yes.
Or you chasing and grabbing.
Yeah.
And then Batwoman ends up you having to take her costume, and she's like, should I keep this for the chasing and the grabbing? And he's like, yeah.
I think what's especially fun about that is in the general back and forth couple bullying is you can tell how uncomfortable it makes him. But I think what's especially good, a good thing that it gets across is Batgirl is wholly trusting of Nightwing, of Dick Grayson. Like it's not even like he hasn't cheated, so it's not an issue. It's more like she knows his character would never even consider doing anything. So
even though he's a top shagger.
Exactly.
Even though the man's a top shagger. And do you know what, lads? This is what we need to aim to be in life.
Be Dick Grayson.
We need to be,
Don't be broody Batman.
Yeah, if you're going to be a top shagger, be one that's worthy of people's trust, you know?
Yeah. Be loyal, but then when your girlfriend inevitably dies and before she comes back to life, like as does happen in these universes,
dick someone down.
You sling a bit, you know?
Is that a moral that we want to be pushing as a podcast? I think it is. I think that's a good message.
Be open and clear and respectful to everyone. Be open and clear about your intentions and be respectful. I think those are the ultimate things.
And have lots of lovely, fun, consensual sex.
Exactly. But also, this is a comic book podcast, so we might not be preaching to the choir here exactly.
Well,
and I say that as one of them.
This is the only reason I don't identify as a comic book nerd.
Yeah, exactly. I can speak on that behalf. So yeah, be like Dick Grayson. In terms of this story, so 106 to 109, swashbuckling adventure, I thought it was a fun enough, story. I think we were quite lucky in the sense that it was like a different kind of story. It was very pirate themed, pirate motif and everything.
And I like piratey stuff.
Yeah, it was fun. And it took place on a boat, with sails and all that. There's a fun joke where they say, well, Dick Grayson's in his Nightwing costume. They're like, you need to gow that costume because we're not doing Nightwing shit. So there's some clothes in the room. And he comes back and says, these are the only clothes I could find. And he looks like, as is referenced, a 40s romance novel cover. He's in a
fully open shirt with a tiny little face mask. Like the Incredible style.
Yes. Because his mask has all the gadgets and tracking and stuff and cameras. So she's like, you can't see where we're going. You can't broadcast to anyone else where we're going. So they get a backup one.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, that's quite the fit. Because when I see him come out in that outfit, I go, oh, for fuck's sake. But then they address it in the comic book and I'm like, okay, that's kind of funny.
Well, they do both in the sense that he's like, this is all that was in the chest in the room. And they're like, what about the wardrobe behind the chest? He goes, oh, I didn't look in there.
And the chest was in front of it.
Yeah. And he's like, well, can I change again? And she's like, no, I think it's funnier if you look like this. So yeah, that was all fun. But generally, the story was just a fun pirate romp.
So in terms of the relationship stuff, he didn't know that she was the captain of a pirate ship.
No, and
so he broke up with her in that kind of selfless way. I don't want my superheroing to affect you.
Yes.
And then the constant theme of their interactions is the fact that she's saying, well, you're going to abandon me again.
Yeah. And there is a really good scene page, where they are having an argument, and it's like, it's kind of well thought out and well written, because it goes back and forth of like, you're going to abandon me again. And he goes, I only abandoned you because I thought I was saving you, like I protecting you.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you don't think Batgirl needs protecting. He's like, because she's Batgirl. She doesn't need protecting. And I still want to protect her, but she doesn't need her. And yeah, it's like,
and then he says, well, at the time I didn't know that you were a pirate captain.
Yes.
And she went, oh, well, yeah, you didn't, did you?
Yeah. And that felt good, because that felt like tension with the argument, and then like just a natural, like logical, well, yes. And characters like these, like when they have these disputes, when they resolve them from being like logical as they would, I love that and stuff, because it's so tempting for writers to just be like, no, let's have a misunderstanding so we can build an argument and add tension to the story. And there's another word I'm trying to think of, like conflict, exactly, yes. So it's tempting for us to be like, well, we could put some conflict here if we just like don't let someone finish their sentence or whatever. But I like in this, these like, no, these characters would know this, like let's have them talk it out and then get to their natural conclusion. So good writing on that aspect. There's much more to say about this, because again, it's a fun story, but it was kind of the like point A, point B, point C, point D, and then we're kind of done for a bit. It was fun, but I don't think there's like much more we can go in depth on this kind of story.
No, I mean, the things that were interesting to me here, realistically, is that it was my introduction to Dick Grayson. I like him a lot. I think he's a really fantastic hero. I think this is where DC should be investing more of their attention, is in stuff like this, where they've not got these huge stakes, they've not got these really highly powered supers, but they've got human characters who have invested in being heroes, going about their kind of medium level stuff.
Yeah.
And there was the human element and the relationship stuff that I always find really interesting, because it's a feature of life, and I think it makes these characters way more relatable to a mass audience. That like Dick Grayson is having a swashbuckling pirate adventure, but really what he's doing is reconciling himself to the reasons that he broke up with his ex.
Yep.
That's relatable shit.
Yeah. And it's got just enough of the superhero shenanigans of like, he had lost his memory and he was a different person, but he got his memories back and they're on a pirate adventure. Like,
so now we can get to my gripe, which you have some stuff you want to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it from my perspective because I think I'm about to learn about it. So I'd like to go into it.
So we're going into issue 110.
Yeah. So issue 1010.
Yeah.
Suddenly just cuts to a completely different fucking story. And issue 109 doesn't resolve the issue that we're having. We don't find out what's in the box.
We do find out what's in the box.
We
do find out what's in the box. It's the footage of his parents, his biological parents, the Graysons.
Did I miss a page?
You might have attention deviated from the
I
reading
may
of the story.
Do you know what?
Last page.
That may have been what I was reading when you picked me up.
may have been. So
So we get a partial resolution.
But then it does have that partial resolution. Then it has that like, but who sent it, and what do I do with this new information? And so it is like a leading. There's more to happen after this. Yes,
and it cuts to a completely different story.
Yes,
which is where we meet Superman Jr. and Batman Jr., and they're in a like cockfighting ring. Is the only way I can describe it. And there's like alien things going in people's there's alien things aliening people.
Yeah.
And turning them into animals. Like when we meet Damien, he's a cat for some reason. So yeah, it completely jumps from one story to another. Is this a feature of the comic? Is it jumping between different plot lines all the time?
So here's what's happening, right? And this is a gripe of mine for ongoing comic releases, right?
Yeah.
And following these ongoing titles. What happens is Marvel and DC both do this probably at least once a year. They have a universe-wide storyline, or it maybe not even universe-wide, but at least like a certain area of the universe has this wide story.
There will be an issue of Superman where we see him dealing with this, and there'll be an issue of Batman where we see him dealing with it.
Yes. So, and there'll be its own title. So there'll be its own title to seemingly be like, oh yeah, you just need to read this, but then it's like, but you also need to read this, and this one.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, haven't we?
And this is a problem of mine because as you've experienced, and why I thought better for you to experience it first and then we talk about it, is you'll be reading an ongoing series and enjoying it. and then all of a sudden it's like the klaxon goes of like, we've got a universe thing, so we have to deal with this now, and it just ruins the vibe. Like, I've literally skipped issues because I've gone like, this isn't the story I care about, so I'm just going to skip these till it gets back to normal again.
Yeah.
Which it does just after a couple of issues. It just then, as if the other previous stuff never happened, it just straight back into it. It's like, oh yeah, where were we with the box and the footage? And like, it's that kind of thing.
Which I get it, because on some level it drives sales for them, because it means that everybody who's reading that big crossover event then needs to pick up a couple of issues of Nightcrawler, probably Nightwing
in this instance, yes.
And then there'll be like a couple of issues of Robin that they'll need to get, and there'll maybe be some Superman Jr. stuff that they need to now read to get all the context. But it disrupts all of those fun titles.
Yes, exactly. So, and this one specifically is called Beast World. So I don't know anything about it. Now we know a little bit about it. Unfortunately, yes. But the fact that I don't know about it, normally I know when these like once a year things happen. Like I'm in the know enough to be like, oh, this is happening currently.
Yeah.
I didn't even know this one was happening, which just goes to show how unimportant it was, really. Yeah. Like no one is raving about Beast World. This kind of stuff originated, but like it's always happened to a degree. But this kind of stuff was extremely prevalent when the universe-wide stuff was stuff that actually concerned everyone, like by its very concept. So like the original, again, not the original one, I'm using it's the earliest one I can reference, but like DC did Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Which you can't have a comic book podcast without knowing a little bit about Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yes.
So I'm familiar with it.
And in that one, for anyone who doesn't know, it's literally like worlds, different alternate universes were slowly being destroyed by this creature called the Anti-Monitor. So because that was happening, it's like everyone needs to be on deck. Like, I don't care what petty bullshit you're dealing with, like currently, like this is important. Everyone has to deal with it now. But because that was used in that way to, again, get all the extra issues sold, and people had to be like, oh, Infinite Crisis is happening, so you need to read all these other issues to know what's going on. Now, X decades later, it's Beast World's happening. Like, I don't care.
Do you know what? I think it could have been really well integrated if there was some forward planning. So if, for instance, in issue 109, there was these moments where Dick Grayson was getting pulled away from the story and it was like, there's stuff going on with Superman, wait a minute, I can't deal with this right now.
Yeah.
And at the end of issue 109, we get a what's in the box, and it would have been really abrupt, but it would have been less abrupt than what we got. And then Dick Grayson gets oh my God, something's happening, you need to drop me off, I need to go, I'm going to deal with this later. And then while he was dealing with this Beast World stuff, actually we're seeing the reluctant part of the hero's journey. So there's been this call to adventure, he needs to go help Damien, but he's reluctant to do so because he's processing all this stuff, and we see him kind of him battling with those two needs.
Yeah.
Like, I need to meet my need, but also I need to meet Damien's need. It would have integrated it into the story in a way that would have been really fun and interesting for me. But it's because he'd been dealing with all of this stuff, and then suddenly we don't see B anymore, and we don't get to find out what's happening with the pirates anymore, and we don't get to find out what's happening with Batwoman, and we're just plopped into what is essentially a Superman story.
Yeah, essentially.
And Superman level shit that Nightwing isn't really equipped. He's equipped to deal with it like on a moment-to-moment basis, but really this isn't Nightwing's problem to fix. This is like a universe-wide thing. This is Superman stuff.
Yeah, his specific thing is Damien is caught up in it, and I'm saving Damien.
I'm imagine Damien is his buddy, right?
Damian Wayne is, so he's he's Bruce Wayne's son.
Yeah.
Or the Robins, because it's the Bat family, the Robins have a kind of brotherly relationship between them all.
And it would appear that Superman's boy feels quite connected to Damien, because he said, I can't feel Damien's heartbeat anymore.
Yeah, so I think because they're all younger superheroes, like the younger superheroes all kind of know each other. Like young superheroes, in the same way that Robins, they have this shared experience that no one else can relate to. Yeah. So they only kind of interact with each other in terms of like socially, because it's like, who else knows like the rigors of being the next bloody Martian Manhunter or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
And I suppose they're a cohort, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really what DC is trying to build up with this, is a new cohort of young supers. They've given us a brand new young Superman.
I mean, they've been doing it for decades, like.
Yeah, but they're really pushing it, aren't they?
They always really push it. Like that's the thing. So what they do is, and this is also a kind of explanation for the whole Rick Grayson thing, they'll try something, they literally throw shit at the wall and see if it sticks. And by sticks, I mean do people like it enough to keep it going? So in the sense, and they do that with comics as well. So in the sense you were saying earlier, like, oh, I wish DC would focus on these types of comics. That's what's happened with Nightwing. Nightwing came out, was like this, people liked it, so it's kept going. It hasn't been rebooted, it hasn't been cancelled. It's one of the longest running of the modern of today, basically.
And I get it, it's good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
But what I mean is they try stuff like this, but very tentatively, and if it's not a success, then they just bin it off.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. All the Robins and all the Superman Juniors, they've all stepped up and been Batman or Superman for a bit. And then eventually people go, yeah, it's all right, but people want the original back.
People want Kal-El, people want Bruce.
Yes, exactly.
I get it.
So yeah, in terms of the whole crossover thing, my two kind of points of reference for it are, I remember like main ones. One was I was reading Daredevil at one point.
Yeah.
And it was the Chip Zdarsky run. It was really fucking good. There was a point where Daredevil basically ends up in prison, right? So I'm following this story and I'm going, what's going to happen next? And then what happens is the fucking Venom symbiotes and their symbiote gods start invading Earth and everyone gets turned into symbiotes. So while I'm following this, like, Daredevil's in prison, what's he going to do? Oh, he's been possessed by a symbiote or whatever, and then he breaks out of prison. And it's like, that, if it wasn't for that wide event, that wouldn't have happened. Like, you've disrupted it all. The other point is, I remember when I read Civil War, the original Civil War, I read the compendium trade paperback.
So did it have all of those bits slapped into it?
Everything that was to do with Civil War. Right. So the main comic is only like 8 or 10 issues long, but then had everything else.
Yeah.
That felt more appropriate because that was about this. That wasn't a universe destroying thing, but it was the Superhero Registration Act.
And I think this is the thing, right? If you can, DC and Marvel, listen now, just for a moment. Those big crossover events on some level are kind of cool, right? Like I get the need for it, but you're going to churn them out anyway. So why not just have really small runs where you see bits of the action from different perspectives and they all get rolled into that main story? And it's like, you don't need it for the main story, but also here's a little bit of Nightwing, here's a bit of Damien, here's a bit of Superman Jr.
Yeah.
And then you just whack it all together in the compendium and you publish it that way. And that makes loads of sense.
Because what they want, where they're making their money, is the single issue purchases.
Yeah, but I imagine those compendium purchases are huge.
Oh yeah, they'll do those as well. But here's the other problem. Those compendiums would make more money if they weren't doing a big universe crossover thing every year.
Yeah.
Like back when Infinite Crisis happened, and again with Civil War, that was like years in between. So when it happened, it was like there was much longer in between back then.
Yeah.
There used to be like every 10 years they would do this big reboot.
And they were basically reboot events to clean up their universes, weren't they?
Yeah, the lore and the backstory and everything.
It all just gets a bit too much, a bit too big, a bit too impenetrable. So you go, fuck it, we'll just burn it all down and start again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it worked in both those ways. Now it's just a money grab.
Yeah.
And again, it can be financially successful, but you can also make it good as well. So yeah, that's the downer I think we've got to here.
I think comic books are interesting because they're the only, now that we're seeing these big universe comic films, we're seeing it in cinema as well. But until now, comic books were the only place where you really had all of these interlinking stories. And so it creates a unique problem set that these writers or these publishing houses have to deal with. And I suppose these big reboot events are the most elegant solution they could come up with, potentially the most profitable solution they could come up with.
But clear distinction, they're not even rebooting them now.
No.
It's just big event and then everyone goes back to normal.
Because
afterwards.
People like the big event. People liked the big reboot event, didn't they?
They liked them when they were more special.
Yeah.
They're not that popular now. I'm not alone in this annoyance. Like everyone's like, oh great, it's night terrors now, and oh it's dark metals, and it's
And I suppose
everything.
It makes all of these different titles that have their own flavour and their own vibe become more homogenous.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, they're all using these same story beats. And I'm like, well, I don't want my Nightwing story to be the same as my Superman story. I want them to be distinct. And again, that was exactly what I said earlier, which is that one of the things I like about these smaller runs is that sometimes you've got these really underpowered human heroes with no superpowers who are going about low-level stuff. And that even though the stakes are lower, that means there can be more personal conflict and there can be more interesting things happening. But as soon as you then bring Nightwing into this wider universe where there's big things happening, now suddenly he's dealing with Superman level shit.
Yes.
And it's like that I I don't necessarily want to see him as part of a big conglomerate dealing with something huge. I was enjoying watching him be a pirate.
Yeah, exactly. And it would have been far more interesting if he had done something like that, but it was still from his perspective.
Yeah,
him being kind of overwhelmed by all this big stuff. But the problem is, again, because of all the messy lore, it's like, well, Batman or the Bat family, they're basically on this level of Superman stuff because they're so skilled and so prepared, and then you throw them back into street stuff, and it just doesn't vibe. You know?
And I suppose you don't want to see Nightwing looking really ruffled dealing with big shit, because let's face it, as Robin cutting about with Batman, he was dealing with huge shit all the time, right? And so he's going to be unruffled, and he's going to be the type of guy who goes, yeah, let's go, let's just get on with this, let's deal with it. But I don't know. Maybe they shouldn't be asking if they could, and they should be asking if they should do these things.
But money rules all, and that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because otherwise, I really like this. Is one I was getting through issue 9, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna keep reading this.
Yeah,
like I'm probably gonna go back a bit. I'm probably gonna explore this a bit more and have like I was enjoying it, actively enjoying it. And issue 10110 was good.
I didn't enjoy it that much, but because I had that drop off. I was like, I'm enjoying the pirate thing, and then by comparison, I was like, oh, this.
I mean, on some level, it was interesting for me because it was my first time meeting Kal-El's son.
Yes,
it was my first time meeting Bruce's son, and so I was seeing all these younger iterations of these really well-established heroes, and I was watching them deal with things. And Bruce Wayne's son was kind of exactly what I would expected Bruce Wayne's son to be like, and Kal-El's son was just like a smaller Kal-El, which I thought was really fun. Like it was, on that level, it was interesting, but I don't know that I wanted it where I got it.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. And for me, I said it was not new stuff. So I was just like, oh, this kind of same old stuff again.
Yeah.
One thing I think I will end on, which I've noticed the pattern of doing, is my one or a couple like quirky notes that I didn't fit earlier in.
Yeah.
I think it's like a nicer way to end it on. It's just
but you need to do the
shoehorning in notes at the end theme.
Yeah.
Which goes, what's like a sound effect for like...
1 minute, I've got it. Open up, wedge it in, it's shoehorn with Ryan.
Yeah, sure.
That's the one. That's the one we do every week.
Yeah. I mean, we've been doing it, so it obviously makes sense. I think maybe amend it to, as we always have, like a bit, like you were on the right basis, but like a bit of like you were on the right line of like open up, open up, shut, trying to make it like less aggressive sounding.
I was trying to make it sound weirdly sexual. Open up, wedge it in, it's shoehorn with Ryan. You signed off on it when I did it in episode 3.
Yes.
Like, I don't understand why you were getting friction on this now, Ryan.
We can always amend it, even though it's always been that way.
No, but it's always been that way. That is tradition, Ryan.
And we are sticklers for tradition. Just like we reboot the entire podcast every year. From episode 1 again.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's always Ryan and Jamie. We just have different characters take up the mantle of Ryan and Jamie.
Our sons.
That's it.
Ryan Jr. and Jamie Jr.
We'll
do that for a couple of episodes where our sons will take over.
I mean, we have to procreate for that to happen, Ryan.
It's the pod. They won't know us because they can't see us. So the sons will just sound exactly the same. The audience can't hear me right now. I'm talking to you directly, but the audience won't know the difference,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll do So yeah, maybe our sons will be on at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get them in.
Yeah. My last note that I'm wedging in is, again, just to end on a positive, in case we do get in the weeds and a bit dour, I liked that when they're busting into the Iceberg Lounge, Nightwing and Superboy, Superman, whichever one he is now, there's one point where they look, how'd you get in? And it's Superboy standing with like 10 burly guards hanging off him. And it's like, well, you couldn't stop us because he's bloody Superman.
Yeah.
And he's just standing there with all these like men in suits hanging off him. So that was fun. I thought that was good.
One of the other things I enjoyed was the little running joke of people's hands slipping.
Yes.
So we didn't really get into the meat of the actual story of 105 to 109. I don't think there's a point. Just read it. It's good.
Yeah. It's a fun pirate story.
But Lucas, one of B's dudes, has somebody tied to a chair and he punches him, and Nightwing says, well, he was tied to a chair. There was no point in that. And he went, oh, my hand slipped. And then later on, there's a callback to it. B punches somebody in the face and says the same thing. And I was like, oh, that was a fun little callback moment. I like a callback.
Yeah, I think we should keep our eyes open for Tom Taylor. I know he's doing other good stuff.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he did the Superman series that we covered, the latest issue on.
Oh, right.
So, and that was fun. Like, that was that kind of vibe. So, he's doing good stuff.
I think this is a contender for one of my favourite superhero comics of the year.
Right, well, that is its own award, so we've got to keep that one going.
Yeah, I think this could be a contender for it.
And over the next, now that we're at the point in the year where there's ones like running ones that have come into like enough issues that have come into this year, we're going to be doing more of them now between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, we're at the point of the year now where we're not struggling for things that release this year because we're 5 months in.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to have more of those from now on till the end of the year. And yeah, it'll be a good award season, which everyone is excited for.
Everyone's talking I've heard, I have an insider at the DC offices, and I've heard that the guys at DC particularly are very excited to hear who gets the nod from us this year.
Yeah, they're like Eisner who, like,
right? Yeah. It's the comic literate end of year roundup awards that are important,
where you may or may not receive a physical award. That's part of the fun. Like, you don't know. You might. But Brian, you probably won't.
Are you atting me right now?
I'm just saying, just objectively, like it's up in the air. Like, who knows, you know?
So, I mean, yeah, this was a fun one. I enjoyed this.
Yeah,
so,
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
To our listeners, thank you so much for coming back every week. We love having you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And any calls to actions?
No.
Come on.
No.
You've shirked that responsibility for the last few weeks.
No, yeah, because I was thinking about it, right? And I don't know how... do you know what it was? I was thinking about content I really love. And one of the things I like is that no calls to action. So we've been telling people for like 70 episodes that they can email us at thecomicliterate@gmail.com and that we do stuff on YouTube and stuff on TikTok. I don't feel the need to tell them every episode.
Okay, but how would you feel about telling people every episode about how we're not telling them in just the way you just did? Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I knew exactly what I was doing.
It's like an anti-call to action.
Yeah, I was doing the call to action in a way that meant I still got to... On principle, I wasn't doing a call to action, but I saw the look on your face that I didn't do one, so I had to placate you.
But this is how we have our cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. We put a hat on it, I think is the expression.
You put a hat on it. But sometimes it feels like a hat on a hat, Ryan.
Yeah, and what's wrong with that?
Cut about with 2 hats on.
Nightwing could. Nightwing would look fantastic in 2 hats.
Yeah, if
Nightwing's the kind of guy, if you saw him wearing something, you went, oh, I should get me one of those. And then you buy it and wear it and you go, oh no, it's because he wore it.
It's because it wasn't the item of apparel, it was the very handsome man who was wearing it.
Exactly. And that's the message you should take away from today.
Is that you should aim to be like Dick Grayson, but remember, you are not Dick Grayson.
And when you're buying clothes from yourselves, try and find models wearing them who look like you.
Go to Trade.
Very helpful.
Go to Homebase.
Go to Homebase.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for listening. Thank you. Goodbye.